Hello again, class. I'm going to start today with a couple of announcements. We are starting our costuming unit, which is my favorite unit, so I'm excited about that. Today is the lesson for Monday, April 6th, so your goal should be to watch this now. Hopefully you are. So we're going to go over a PowerPoint to introduce you to what the job and the role of a costume designer is. On Wednesday, April 8th, so that's the next class, your lecture is a costuming video assignment. So you'll watch 2 YouTube videos about different roles in costuming, and you're going to do a class discussion about it on Canvas. Then Friday, I'm going to stick with the college calendar. There are no classes on Friday because it is Good Friday, so I'm not going to have any content up on Friday. But on Monday, the 13th, April 13th, we're going to have a guest come and Zoom in with our class. So that is a live class. Mark your calendars for that. Her name is Anna Steinbach. She lives in New York City, and she is a costumer. She's done all kinds of things. Your assignment that'll be due on that day, so you have 1 week from April 6th to get this done, is to look at her resume, and you're going to submit 1 question to ask her during that Zoom meeting. Just like before, when I've passed out little slips of paper, this is the way that I do this class when I have someone come in to speak to you guys about costumes or lights or whatever. Everybody writes down their name and a question on a slip of paper, and then as you ask that question, you'll hand it in. Since we're not face-to-face, you'll submit your question on Canvas beforehand. Still have it in front of you when we're discussing things with her, but then you'll be able to ask her face-to-face, and I'll have a record of it in the assignment on Canvas of what question you asked. Great. So we're going to get started with our slideshow. Great. Start over. All right, so the manner in which a person dresses can indicate multiple things. If you just look around you or look out your window, watching movies, watching television, the way people are dressing tells us a lot about that person or that character. So it tells you their position and their status. So if you have to go to the grocery store, you know who works there and who doesn't work there, right? You know their position because of the way that they're dressed. You know who the manager might be because they're probably dressed a little bit nicer, or they have a nicer badge on. Often they'll be wearing like a button-up shirt and a tie instead of a polo shirt. And it's also going to tell you people's status. So wealthy people tend to dress a certain way. Poor people tend to dress a certain way. Stereotypes, all of that. But generally, these are all generalizations. You can tell about a person's status and position from their clothing. You can also tell their gender identity. So the way that they're choosing to present themselves, the clothing that they're wearing is telling you about how masculine or feminine or neither they feel. Their occupation. So just like we said, at the grocery store, you can tell who works there. You can tell, you know, a bank manager will dress a certain way. A drag queen will dress a certain way. A teacher will dress a certain way in general, a police officer, etc. Their relative flamboyance or modesty. So how outgoing this person is. I don't tend to dress extremely flamboyant or in a lot of bright colors. But there are lots of people do, so that tells you a little bit about their personality. Degree of independence or regimentation. So what that means is, do they feel free or do they feel like they're trapped in a box, right? Do they feel like every bit of, or can you tell that every bit of their life is controlled and that they're being required to dress a certain way or present a certain way? And then depending on if someone is dressed for work or for leisure or a routine event or a special occasion, so you can tell what people are dressed for. Someone that's going to the beach is going to look someone that's different from someone that's going to the mall or that's going to work or that is going to church. You wear something specific, or if you're going to a wedding or a funeral, right? Weddings and funerals may have the same level of fancy, right? But you're still going to dress differently going to a wedding than you are a funeral, whether that's different colors or a different silhouette. You might cover up more if you're going to a funeral, for example. So all of these things affect the way that people dress, right? So all costumes and actual clothing. So the difference between costumes and clothing is costumes are designed by a costume designer to be put on stage, and clothing is just stuff that we all own on our own. Both of those things hold symbolic importance. They're going to tell an audience or the people around us so much about a character before the character even speaks in a play or a musical, right? So we as costume designers and costumers want to make sure that we are communicating to the audience things about this character. The subtext, right, is coming through based on the way that they look. So the objectives of a costume designer. The costume design is going to help establish the style of the production, and we're going to go through each of these in much more depth in just a second. So the style of things, they're going to tell us the historical period of the play and the locale. So just like the sets, it's basically the same objectives that the set does, right? We need to know when it's happening. We need to know where it's happening just by seeing the people. We need to know the nature of individual characters or groups in the play. So we need to know stuff about them, like their stations in life, their occupations, their personalities. That's what we were talking about in the previous slide. We need to be able to show relationships among characters. So far we've just been talking about a singular character. We can tell all this about this one person. But we also, through their costumes, need to be able to tell what their relationships are to one another. We need to know if some are higher ranking than other ones, if they need to stay separate than these groups right here. They're going to be contrasted, right? How do we tell that these are the Hatfields and the McCoys, or the Sharks and the Jets, or the Capulets and the Montagues? Costumes are going to tell us that, even more than sets can tell us that. Where appropriate, symbolically convey the significance of individual characters or the theme of the play. So the theme of the play, we can be using those metaphors just like we used with the set design. We can use our overarching metaphors, but we can also show who the main character is, who's the most important in the story right now at this moment. So by emphasizing their costume, we can even subconsciously make the audience's eye be drawn to that person, so we know that we have to pay attention to what they have to say in this moment. They need to meet the needs of individual performers. So a performer needs a pocket. You need to make sure that there's those practical things you're taking care of, not just the aesthetics. And then we need to be consistent with the production as a whole, especially the other visual elements. So we keep going back to that in every single one of these slideshows. With the designers, we need to make sure that there is a consistent theme and a visual story that's being told that arches through the entire production. So we're going to go through all of these again, right? So number one objective of the costume designer, help establish the style of a production. So these are some examples of The Lion King. You think of the cartoon The Lion King, that has its own style. The musical Broadway version has its own style. It's not the same as the cartoon. It is based in lots of African prints in the fabrics you can see here, and also these awesome masks that they're wearing. All have a stylistic element that is carried throughout the entire show, through all of the characters. They also show with the materials that are being made are the same kind of materials that are used in the sets, right? So the set isn't realistic, just like the costumes are not realistic. These do not look like real lions. Pride Rock does not look like real Pride Rock. The sunset or the sunrise in this show does not look real. It looks like it's made out, all of it looks like it's made out of these cool same materials, the woods and the grasses, and all the different cool fibers. It's the style of the production. Everything is done in this way. There are lots of puppets that are done in the same style. So there's consistency there. Objective number 2, indicate the historical period of a play and the locale in which it occurs. So the time and the place. So this is going to be a clip from Finding Neverland. It is one of the shows that our guest has worked on. Anna Steinbach was the costume coordinator for the national tour of Finding Neverland. So that means that it went up on Broadway and then they handed the entire show to Anna. So she was in charge of making sure, well, she can talk about this more, but making sure that all these costumes fit the touring actors, which were different than the Broadway actors. And she basically had to remake the show for the tour. So here we go. Think about, so this, even though it's partially historic, you can tell the time and the place. You can hear my dog crying. Hi, Riley. I'll show you. There she is. Can you see her? Riley. Well, that didn't work as well as I wanted it to. Hi, Riley. Hi. What are you whining about? This monitor is too heavy for that. Riley, it's okay. Okay, so objective number 3, indicate the nature of individual characters or groups in a play. So the stations in life, their occupations, their personalities. You want to be able to tell just by looking at someone, that's our objective, and while making costumes for a play, to be able to tell these things about their life. So we can tell right here, this is from the play On the Town, for which Anna was a principal dresser. So that means she was backstage dressing principal characters. Principals are the leads. So these two guys right here were the 2 people that she was in charge of. Getting them in and out really quickly in between scenes. If they had to go from one scene to another, she made sure that they did that quick change. So these are different characters from On the Town. Obviously, you can tell that these are sailors, right? The costume's going to tell you this. This is a piano teacher. We can tell partially because of the prop that's sitting there with her, right? The scene design, the prop that's her piano. But from her costume, it tells you so much about the nature of this piano teacher. Do you feel like you know? Hopefully you feel like you can kind of tell something about her. She's a little bit eccentric, maybe artsy. She's got those big glasses, and so she's definitely kind of out there. So we're going to watch a little clip of this. I want when you are watching this clip of On the Town, to look at all the different groups of people in the show and tell if you can tell and spot what people's occupations are, what their wealth level is, who they're friends with, who their group is, their stations in life, something about their personality just by the way that they're dressed. So try to spot there's so many different costumes in the show, and think about what it's telling you about that person or about the place that they're in when you see that. And I do apologize, for some reason the audio quality on these is strange, so I'm like moving my mouse around to try to keep the quality up. Oops, here we go. New York, New York, New York, New York. It's a hell of a town. We've got one day here and not enough minutes. See the famous sights. We'll find the romance and danger in it. It's the Broadway lights. Oh, we tear on our chests, so what we like the best of the night. Sci-fi nights, New York,